Today we're going to talk about how to use the percent equation to solve a lot of the same types of percent questions we've been working with. We are also going to explore how to work with tax and different sale prices, things like that. So let's just go ahead and get started. The percent equation is an equivalent form of the percent proportion in which the percent is written as a decimal. So let's just review really quickly the percent proportion, because I do want to point out that we are working with two different methods now, and I will ask that you show me how to use each different method separately. So let's just keep it straight. So in the percent proportion, we have the percent over 100 is equal to part over base, and we can use the cross product to solve. With the percent equation, we are basically working with the percent as a decimal. So instead of setting it up as a ratio over 100, we go ahead and divide by 100 and get that decimal and work with that decimal instead. And this is what the equation looks like. Part equals, and I'm going to say the decimal times the base. I'm saying decimal because that's what our percent needs to be converted into before we can work with it. So you just take your percentage, divide by 100, make it a decimal, and then we can set up the equation in this format. So what does this look like and how do we use it? Well, for example, let's go ahead and find 52% of 85, and we are going to employ the percent equation. So we're going to use the same keywords that we've been using before. In particular, to figure out your base, you want to be looking for the word of, like out of what? Out of 10, out of 100, out of 5. Also, when we are given a percentage, we immediately want to convert it into a decimal and work with it that way. So here, we know the percent is 52%. I can convert that to a decimal by dividing by 100. It's of 85, so that's going to be our base. So we're finding some number that is 52% of 85. We can estimate in our heads, you know, what's half of 80? 40. Okay, so our answer should be somewhere around 40. And let's go ahead and now use the percent equation. Let's just set it up. I'm trying to find the part. I can use x, y, p. It doesn't matter, but I am finding that part, so I'm going to put a variable there. And it will equal 52% or 0.52 times 85. You may use a calculator for quick calculations. So go ahead and multiply. We will get 44.2. And we already had that percent, so again, this is not a percentage. I can say, so, you know, 44.2 is 52% of 85, and that works with the estimate that we just came up with, that it should be around 40. Okay, so that works out nicely. Again, always double check. If you get some number in the thousands and that doesn't seem logical, go back and look at your work, make sure you type things into your calculator correctly, etc., etc. Let's take a look at another example. Let me just scroll down a bit, and let's say we have 28. Okay, so 28 is what percent of 70? So maybe in this case, you're taking a test, it's out of 70 points, and you earned 28 points. So 28 out of 70. Well, what's that percentage? That's basically the same type of question. You can probably think in your head right now, it's going to be pretty low, because half of 70, right, is what? You can think of it, right? 35. So this is less than half. So we know that the percentage is going to be less than 50%. But again, let's see how to set this up using the percent equation. So 28 is what percent? So we don't know that piece. That will be our variable x of 70. That is our base. So we are given the part. 28 out of 70. 28 is our part. So when I set this up, 28 equals x times 70, or you could write 28 equals 70x, since we typically write the numeric portion first, but I would accept either or. To find that percentage, we need to go ahead and balance this equation. You are going to get a decimal, so type it into your calculator. You should get, did you get it? Yeah. 0.4. And we're not done. So let's put some stars here, okay? Not done. How come we're not done? How come I just can't plug a percent sign on this and go, oh yeah, it's 0.4%? The reason why we cannot do that is because we're not working with the proportions like we were before, where we had, the percentage over 100. So we do need to take another step. I'll just call it step 2. We need to convert the decimal into a percentage. It is true that 0.4 times 70 gives you 28, but remember, going back to the equation, it's part equals that decimal times the base. That decimal needs to be converted into a percentage if we actually want to answer the question of what percent. So you take your 0.4, you multiply by 100, voila, we know our quick tricks of moving the decimal over twice, and we will get 40%. And that does make sense because, like I said before, 50% of 70 would be 35, and 28 is a little bit less than 35. Okay, let's just do some more examples. Let's try one like this. So 18 is 45% of what number? The setup is key. I know all of you know how to balance equations. I know that you can use a calculator, but your calculations don't mean anything if the setup isn't correct to start with. So always double check. Do you have your numbers and variables in the right places? So again, we're given a percent, so I'm going to change that into my decimal, 0.45. Of what number? That's x. 18. 18 is. We can use our keyword of is even to represent the equal sign here. 18 is 45% of what number? So that will be our base. Out of what? We're not sure. But again, we can kind of estimate. I mean, 45% is pretty close to 50%. So 18 is half of what number? That's what we want to be thinking of in general. So again, 18, let's just make it easy. 20, half of 20 is 40, so it should be somewhere around that. This will be our part. So here is my equation, 18 equals 0.45x. Please make sure you are writing these equations down. It's not just about typing it into your calculator. I want to see the work. I want to see that you can set this up correctly. So just take your time to do that. We will go ahead and divide by 0.45, so that's what I'm showing on paper. You may use a calculator to actually calculate, and you should get x equaling, hey, 40. And that's true. 18 is 45% of 40, so that works. Makes sense. Let's talk about some real-life situations. So let's say Scott wants to buy a digital video recorder that costs $250. Let's just write that down. So we want to buy a digital video recorder that costs $250. And if there's a 6% sales tax added, what's the total cost? So what's the total? Please make sure that you're always paying attention as to what it is you're trying to find. Sometimes I might just ask you for the sales tax. Other times I'll ask for the total. There are lots of different ways we could solve this. One way is to use the percent equation. And you can even use that in a couple of ways. So just take a look. I'm going to solve this one way first, and if you like that way, you may use it all the time, or you might switch back and forth between this version and another. It's okay. However you'd like to approach these, you may. So 6% sales tax. First, you might want to find, the sales tax. And how would you do that? Well, you're answering the question, what is 6% of 250? So 6% of 250. How do we set that up? Well, again, I'm going to use the percent equation. I'm going to change 6% into its decimal form. Of 250, that's my base. So when I multiply that together, I should get my part. You may calculate, and you will go ahead and get 15. So again, what does that mean? Always make sure you understand what your numbers represent. So this means that the sales tax is $15. Okay, so step 1. But how do you find the total? Well, you have to add everything together. So you can line it up, $250 plus $15. You can do that in your head. The total will be $265. Now, You could do this in one step. Instead of finding the sales tax first, you could go ahead and just find the total. How do you do that? Well, you know you're paying more than what you are starting with. So the $250 is your base, but you need to pay more than that in the end. So instead of just working with 6%, if you know you have to pay $250 and then 6% of $250 on top of that, I can find 106% of $250. And again, it's because you're going to be paying 100% of the $250 plus 6% of the $250. So in one fell swoop, we can get the job done. What does that look like? Same thing, I'm finding my part, my total, but I'm working with the decimal 1.06 instead of just 0.06. When you multiply this, you will get the answer straight out of $265. It's pretty efficient. Again, it doesn't matter to me which way you choose to work. Let's look at another example. Here we go. So let's say Mr. Potter, Mr. Harry Potter, I don't know if it was Harry, but Mr. Potter bought a memory card for $137.46, which includes tax. I know we are cloud computing more nowadays, okay, but let's say memory card was something that you needed, so we'll write this down. This is including tax. The original price, or the sticker price before tax, that's what that means, sticker price before tax, was $129.99. And I'm going to say about, so we're going to get to round a little bit here. About what percent sales tax did he pay? So similar to the problems we looked at before, except we're given different pieces of information. Here we don't know the sales tax. Okay, what percent sales tax? So that's going to be our variable x, which means we have the part and we have the base. So what are they? Well, we know what was paid. We could use that information right off. Let me just write this as 1, and set that equal to the part. And we know that whatever the sales tax is would have been multiplied by the original price of $129.99. So basically I'm working with the total, the original price, which means that my percentage in this case will be over 100%. So I'll need to adjust it in the end to get the correct answer, but this is one way we could look at it. You can divide both sides by $129.99 and you'll get a decimal of 1.054 ... When we go ahead and round this, oops, sorry, I wrote the wrong number. That's a 7, I believe. When we round this, it says about how much. We could get 106%, but again, we need to take off the 100% and just say, you know, the sales tax is 6%. The other way to look at it, well, we can subtract first to figure out what was paid in tax. And then work with that amount. So when you subtract, you're taking, you know, your total, 137.46. Did I write 45 or 46? Oops, let me change this. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to subtract, and I will get $7.46. So again, we have to recognize that this is the amount of sales tax paid. And I can say, okay, well, how did you get that amount of sales tax? Well, we took some percentage and multiplied it by the original amount of money. We can solve for this, and you will get a decimal. And when you round it, you can say it will become about 6%. Okay, so we will do more practice tomorrow. I will see you then. Thanks.